First of all, I got to say that the market was very nervous earlier in the week because the market didn't understand something that Art Laffer and Larry Kudlow have been teaching us forever, which is when there's a productivity boom, like we're seeing because of artificial intelligence, that everybody's better off. That's where prosperity comes from. If you go back to the dawn of the pre-industrial age, right, it was the introduction of new inventions and so on that built our wealth over time. And right now we're in the midst of a productivity boom unlike anything we've ever seen, and it's being fed by great policies. We've got a big, beautiful bill that's making it so that the people get to expense when they build these AI centers. And when all the capital spending comes in, it's up 6.5% since the big, beautiful bill, then that makes everybody's wage go up. And one of the things I can remember a few months ago, every time I came on TV, people said, oh, but the people aren't feeling it. And I've said, and you taught me to say this, people will feel it when they see it in their wallets. And guess what happens in January? That's when people often get their annual salary adjustment. And all of a sudden, the consumer, even the Democrats of the Michigan survey are celebrating because they're seeing it in their own wallets. And so the people are seeing it in their paychecks. We're seeing it in the surveys because now they see, oh, gosh, look at all the extra money I got in my paycheck. And we're seeing it in equity markets. And so it really is a kind of golden age. Final thought, we're now seeing GDP down, GDP now down a little bit from the 5 to 4.5. But if we get that, then that means we had a 3% year, and the IMF forecasted we'd have a 1.5% year. And so we've doubled the expectation of, you know, the IMF, the big forecaster, and we did that even though Joe Biden had one quarter. And so this is what Trump's economy looks like.
I've been fighting fake news reporters all day long here in the Washington, D.C. swamp who are trying to fearmonger the American people into believing that this administration is going after their hard-earned tax dollars and their hard-earned Social Security checks. So I want to set the record straight on your show tonight, Sean, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do so. President Trump has directed Elon Musk and the Doge team to identify fraud at the Social Security Administration. They haven't dug into the books yet, but they suspect that there are tens of millions of deceased people who are receiving fraudulent Social Security payments. And so their goal in going into the Social Security Administration is to identify three things. Number one, to identify duplicate payments and to end them. Number two, to identify payments that are going to deceased people who are no longer living and should no longer be receiving that money. And number three, to protect the integrity of this system for hardworking Americans who have been paying into it their entire lives. So rest assured to all of the people watching your show tonight, if you paid into the system honestly, you will continue to receive your Social Security checks. Do not buy into the lies from the legacy fake news media who are trying to fear you and scare you into believing otherwise. This is what we've seen them do about President Trump for years with every promise that he has made. And he's going in there to protect your hard-earned money. That is the ultimate goal.
We commissioned a forensic review. I got a copy of the laptop data. I have it here still. I went to a lot of effort to get the cleanest copy of the laptop data, the same data that was provided to the FBI, because I didn't want to have any professional journalistic risk for CBS News. I wanted this thing to be totally locked down. When we did the story, we did it after the midterms. I argued against that because it was ready before the midterms. And my training is that you should always do the story when it's ready to go. You should not be dictated by the political cycle. Once we got the laptop story on the morning news, I felt that there was so much there that we could still do. For example, in the text messages, there's unfortunately the use of the N-word, the liberal use of the N-word. And I thought this was worthy of a story, but I was told that it was not something that interested CBS News. Then I asked for a forensic review of the laptop, and we found that there were more than half a dozen emails that were likely used by Joe Biden. I thought that was a story, but the answer that came back was, well, we need to know what the content is of the emails. But that was going to be a years-long process. So there was no way. So there were a lot of reasons I was told not to do it, not to pursue it. I spent a lot of my time at CBS following the Hunter Biden story. And one of the things that really struck me is this kind of disconnect. I didn't understand how a senior executive like George Cheese could tell me that this was a high priority for the network and for his boss. And yet the executives at CBS News, show producers, anchors could refuse that. I came to the conclusion that they must have felt that they were more powerful than George Cheeks, which was astonishing to me. I'd never worked at a place where a directive from the top would be so defied.
On tips and overtime, there's a max reduction for tips is $25,000. So imagine if you are somebody who uses tips as part of your salary or to make your living, that will have an impact. The senior deduction, you have to be 65 years old. It phases out at $75,000. But again, for people who are saying gas prices, which are lower, but that food prices are higher, that it's hard for them, that might help as well. There's a no tax on car loan interest. Now, that can be helpful, but what might be even more helpful is what they announced last week, which is they're doing away with some of the EPA rules on these car and fuel mileage. That actually will help bring the cost of cars down probably even more. And then a child tax credit expansion. That's very bipartisan. A lot of people like this. A lot of people love to see good economic news, but I would say Josh Holmes, our next guest here. Josh, you know communications very well. To me, economic communications is one of the hardest things. If the economy is great, everyone feels it. If it doesn't feel so great, it's hard to convince people that it's going so well. One question for you. How important is it to find the right ratio for President Trump to say, look what I inherited from President Biden, but also to look ahead at what's to come?
Yeah, well, listen, I think President Trump is doing exactly what he needs to do in terms of getting out there and selling this. You cannot let Democrats frame an affordability debate.
For too long, this department has sent our best and brightest officers to Harvard, hoping the university would better understand and appreciate our warrior class. Instead, too many of our officers came back looking too much like Harvard, heads full of globalist and radical ideologies that do not improve our fighting ranks. At the War Department, we will strive to maximize taxpayer value in building lethality to establish deterrence. It's that simple. That no longer includes spending millions of dollars on expensive universities that actively undercut our mission and undercut our country. We train warriors, not wokesters. Harvard, good riddance.
In 2006, they discovered that Roundup was a desiccant. So that, and what that means, if you spray it on a crop, it will actually dry out the crop. And one of the big enemies of the farmer is that if there's rain around the time of harvest, their crops can get wet, and then they get moldy, and then it ruins the entire silo.
Yeah.
And so what what Monsanto did is they began telling farmers, spray this on the crop, on your wheat, right before harvest or at the time of harvest. And it was so popular that about 85% of the Roundup that has been used in history has been used since 2006.
Wow.
And a large part of that is as a desiccant. And what that meant is for the first time they're spraying it on food
Yeah.
right at harvest.
Yeah.
And for the first
Not
time,
early in the season when it may
Right.
have a chance to wash off, but actually just before you're going to eat it.
right. And they're spraying it for the first time on wheat because there was no such thing as Roundup Ready wheat.
Yeah.
They started spraying it on wheat as a desiccant. And so 2006 marks the date when suddenly these gluten allergies began exploding. And the
Interesting.
celiac disease and all these kind of wheat problems that we started seeing in this country. If you measure back and say, when did it start? You can look and draw a red line, and it's 2006, and it's the year that they began spraying it on wheat.
It's the whole thing's very crazy. I mean, the media is incredibly partisan. I mean, they're not. I mean, almost all the media is, left shifted.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird if you talk to somebody who gets all their information from like what I call legacy media. They're living in a different world.
Yeah.
Than if they say are listening to your podcast or getting news from X or just if it's kind of wild. Like
It is very wild.
like you talked, it's like they're living in an alternate reality.
Oh, there's a lot of people that I talk to that I have to go, where did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the Associated Press, which I call Associated Propaganda, the AP. They ran a international news story saying that Doge fired air traffic controllers, but we didn't fire any air traffic controllers at all. In fact, we're trying to hire air traffic controllers, not fire them.
Yeah, I saw that. You made a tweet about it, right?